The snow fell quietly on Fifth Avenue as Jonathan Blake stepped out of his evening business meeting. At 37, he'd grown accustomed to these late nights, the endless negotiations that built his commercial development empire. His dark hair was touched with early flecks of silver, his tailored black coat a shield against both the cold and the world. Success had come early for Jonathan, but it had cost him something he was only beginning to understand he'd lost. He was reaching for his phone to call his driver when he heard a small voice, barely audible above the whisper of falling snow. "Excuse me, sir?" Jonathan looked down to find a little girl standing on the sidewalk, no more than 4 years old. She had reddish-blonde curls escaping from beneath a worn knit cap, her cheeks pink from the cold. She wore a puffy beige coat that had seen better days, a red dress visible beneath it, and small boots that were slightly too large. A green backpack hung from her tiny shoulders, and her blue eyes were wide with an emotion Jonathan recognized immediately as fear. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" he asked, crouching down to her level. The sidewalk was cold beneath his knees, dampness seeping through his expensive trousers, but he didn't notice. The little girl nodded slowly, her lower lip trembling. "I can't wake up my mom." The words hit Jonathan like a physical blow. "What do you mean you can't wake her up?" "Where is she?" "At home. I tried and tried, but she won't open her eyes. She's on the floor by the couch." Tears began sliding down the child's round cheeks. "I got scared. I remembered she said if there's ever an emergency, go find help. So I put on my coat and came outside, but everyone just walks past me." Jonathan's mind raced, years of executive decision-making kicking into focus. "What's your name, honey?" Sophia Martinez?" "Okay, Sophia. I'm Jonathan. Can you show me where you live? Can you take me to your mom?" The little girl nodded, reaching up to take his hand with a trust that made Jonathan's chest tighten. Her small fingers were cold, even through her mittens. She led him down the street around a corner, and into a neighborhood that grew progressively shabbier. The elegant storefronts gave way to older buildings, some with broken windows, others with sagging steps. They stopped in front of a narrow brownstone that had been divided into apartments. Sophia pulled a key on a string from inside her coat, her fingers fumbling with the lock. Jonathan helped her, his hands steady despite the fear coursing through him. They climbed 2 flights of stairs, the wallpaper peeling, the carpet threadbare. Sophia's apartment was tiny, maybe 500 square feet total. But it was clean, Jonathan noticed, decorated with obvious care. Children's drawings covered one wall, held up with colorful tape. A small Christmas tree sat in the corner, handmade ornaments hanging from its branches. And there, just as Sophia had said, a woman lay motionless on the floor beside the couch. Jonathan rushed to her side, his fingers finding her neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, faint but steady. The woman was young, maybe 30, with light brown hair pulled back in a braid. Even unconscious, Jonathan could see the delicate features, the exhaustion etched into her face. Her skin was pale, too pale, and when he touched her forehead, it burned with fever. "Sophia, I need to call for help, okay?" Jonathan pulled out his phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. As he relayed the address to the dispatcher, he noticed the details of the room. A stack of medical bills on the small table, all marked "past due" in red. An empty prescription bottle on the counter. A calendar on the wall with shift schedules written in careful handwriting, double shifts marked in red. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Jonathan stood back, holding Sophia, who had buried her face in his coat. The little girl was trembling now, silent tears soaking through the expensive fabric. He rubbed her back gently, whispering reassurances he wasn't sure he believed. "Is she diabetic?" one of the paramedics asked, checking the woman's vital signs. "I don't know," Jonathan admitted. "I just found her." "Found her? Are you family?" "No, her daughter came to get me." It sounded absurd, explaining how a 4-year-old had walked through a snowstorm to find a stranger. But the paramedic just nodded, focused on his patient. They loaded the woman, Sophia's mother, onto a stretcher. "We're taking her to St. Mary's," the lead paramedic told Jonathan. "She's in diabetic shock. Looks like she's been sick and couldn't keep her medication down. She's lucky the little one knew to get help." At the hospital, Jonathan found himself in an uncomfortable plastic chair in the emergency room waiting area, still holding Sophia. The little girl had finally stopped crying, but she refused to let go of his hand. A nurse had brought her a juice box and some crackers, which she nibbled on mechanically. "Do you have any other family?" Jonathan asked gently. "Grandparents? An aunt or uncle?" Sophia shook her head. "Just Mommy. My daddy went away before I was born. Mommy says he wasn't ready to be a daddy." Jonathan felt something crack open inside his chest. This child, this brave little girl who'd walked into the snow to save her mother, was completely alone in the world except for the woman fighting for her life. Behind those emergency room doors, a social worker appeared, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. "I'm Mrs. Patterson," she said softly. "Sophia, honey, can you tell me what happened tonight?" As Sophia recounted the story in her small, halting voice, Jonathan learned more. Her mother, Rebecca Martinez, worked as a night nurse at a care facility across town. She'd been battling the flu for days but couldn't afford to miss work. This evening, after coming home from a double shift, she'd collapsed. Sophia had tried everything she could think of, had even brought her mother water and the phone, but Rebecca hadn't woken up. "I'll need to place Sophia in temporary foster care until her mother recovers," Mrs. Patterson said quietly to Jonathan. "There's no other family and—" "No." The word came out more forcefully than Jonathan intended. He softened his tone. "I mean, isn't there another option? I'll stay with her. Or she could come with me. You can't just send her off with strangers right now." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Blake, I appreciate your concern, but we have procedures." "You're not family. You're not even an acquaintance. The state has protocols for situations like this. Then I'll hire lawyers who can challenge those protocols." Jonathan was surprised by the intensity of his own reaction. This child just saved her mother's life by being brave enough to ask a stranger for help. I'm not going to let her be traumatized. Further, by being taken from the one place she feels safe, which right now happens to be with me. The social worker studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Let me make some calls." 2 hours later, through a combination of Jonathan's reputation, his lawyers working overtime, and the unusual circumstances, a temporary arrangement was made. Jonathan would be Sophia's guardian until Rebecca recovered, with daily check-ins from social services. It was highly irregular, the social worker emphasized. But given that it was now nearly midnight and Sophia had been through enough trauma for one night, they'd make an exception. "Can we see my mommy first?" Sophia asked, her small voice breaking the tension. They were allowed into Rebecca's room for a few minutes. She was awake now, though barely, hooked up to IVs and monitors. When she saw Sophia, tears streamed down her face. "Baby, I'm so sorry," she whispered.